So far, you duplicated and placed light poles and other street lights using duplication tools such as Array and Spacing tool. Here, use an even easier and more intuitive approach by turning editable poly objects into standard 3ds Max primitives. For that, use a free downloadable script called Primitive Maker by Garp. This extremely helpful tool can be found where most other free scripts are found, namely at scriptspot.com. Use a web browser and navigate to scriptspot.com. And then do a search for Primitive Maker. Make sure you select the one authored by Garp. There's a little animation that showcases the tool and a paragraph of text that describes it. As you will see in a second, it's very well conceived and easy enough to use without any instruction manual. Scroll down and download the script. Choose a place for it on your local drive. In this movie, I'll just place it on the desktop. In 3ds Max, open the file that contains the object you want to turn into primitives, in this case, the file named urbandesignComponents.max. From the Max Script menu, choose Run Script. Browse and select the Primitive Maker script. A small dialog appears. The category input is important. Here you can specify a label that will eventually appear in the geometry list of the Create panel. Name the category UD Components for Urban Design Components. Let's take a look at how we can turn the stop sign into a primitive. You need to set a name for the primitive. This will be used as a button label, but also as a base object name. In your case, it's important that all primitives added to the city block scene start with the prefix UDC_. As mentioned before, this is part of the scene management approach we have adopted to make objects easier to select. Set the name as UDC_stop. It's not very elegant, but it'll serve its purpose well enough. Choose Pick Template Object and then click the stop sign in the scene. Its name appears in the window. Lastly, click the Make Primitive plugin button. You are asked to specify a folder, choose one or create one. In this movie, I already have one named UD Comps right on the desktop. I'll use that. Click OK to confirm, and a new primitive is created. What the script did is it created a subfolder named after the category you specified. In that subfolder, a special script was created after the primitive name you selected, in this case, UDC_stop, with the category appended. Check out the geometry creation list, and you will notice a new entry named UD Components. That new entry has a new button named UDC_stop that you can use as any other standard primitive in 3ds Max. This means you can select the new tool and click and drag in the viewport to create a new stop sign in the scene. You can change the size, but in our case, the size of these components should remain constant. Stop signs, fire hydrants, and mailboxes shouldn't vary in size. In this case, simply click the original size button to make sure the scale is reset. You may notice the material has not been retained. This is by design, and I for one agree with the author on this. This gives you more flexibility to apply different materials if and when you need to. After all, none of the other 3ds Max primitives have default materials applied to them. What's interesting and powerful, though, is that face IDs are preserved. This means that you can apply the same existing multi-sub material to the new object, and it will look exactly like the original. To create a new primitive for the bench, for example, the category name is already in place. This ensures the new primitive will be added to the UD Components panel. Simply name the new primitive UDC_bench, and then click the appropriate object in the scene. Make a primitive out of it, and specify the same folder you specified earlier. You now have a new primitive for the bench that you can use effortlessly. Create primitives for the fire hydrant, the mailbox, and even the bus stop shelter. You can certainly create primitives for the remaining objects as well, but be aware that Primitive Maker works with one mesh object at a time. This means it won't allow you to select multiple objects in a hierarchy, as you have here with the traffic light. Since we've already covered the duplication and placement of those, as well as poles and street lamps, we won't turn them into primitives. Go ahead and test out the primitives you created. When done, you can select all scene objects and apply the UD components material to them so that they all look similar. Close the Primitive Maker window. Reset the scene, but do not save your file. Note that in a new scene, the custom primitives are still accessible. This means you can open your city block scene and add components to it. Use your file or open CityBlocks UD primmaker.max if you need to catch up. Maximize the view in perspective mode and zoom in on the center intersection. Start by placing a bus stop shelter or two near the intersection. Use standard transform tools to position and orient the objects in place. Similarly, place a bench or two nearby, a fire hydrant, or a mailbox occasionally. And maybe a few stop signs along the inner roads. Take a minute and go around the scene to add the components you need where you need them. Ultimately, you want to apply the single material that affects all UD components. First, open the Slate Material Editor. It has the default view, which contains the environment background settings, and the Roads view, which stores the materials for the road infrastructure. So go ahead and create a third view and name it UD Components, or simply Urban for short. Use the material picker and select one of the merged poles, traffic lights, or street lights in the scene. Those already have the proper material applied. You can collapse the nodes and rearrange them as you have already learned to do. To select the urban design components in the scene, it is now an easy task because of the way you named them. Press H to open the Select from Scene dialog and type UDC in the Find field. The focus needs to be away from the material editor for H to work. All objects whose names start with these letters get selected. Click OK to confirm. All urban design components in the scene are now selected. This means that you can easily apply the same materials to all of them in one operation. There's one final note you need to be made aware of. The way you learn to use Primitive Maker in this movie is session-based. This means if you were to exit and restart 3ds Max, you would lose the UD Components Primitives panel. In the next movie, you'll learn how to make it permanent.